Do you do any pauses in the middle or anything, or you just go straight through?
Just go straight through. But if you need a pause, just let me know.
I just assumed from that one New Year's episode that you take like 7 bathroom breaks.
No. I've got one high noon. But seeing that mug makes me wish I had more. Also, I feel like it's Sunday, so I was like, oh no, I better not. Maybe I'll see now I might need a pause for
a beverage.
Yeah, just for a beverage. Yeah.
Exactly. All good.
Well, good. All right, let's kick this thing off.
All right.
Hello, and welcome back to History on the Table. Not our normal intro tonight, but a very special guest. Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everyone who you are, why you're here.
Hey everyone, I'm Kevin, and I finally met Matt in Kansas, and he dragged me along to this thing.
Yeah,
those of you on the History on the Table Discord might know me as First Contact Gamer, and I do some YouTube content on there for war games and PC games, but excited to be on the show and talk a little bit about Historic Fest 2024.
Yeah, we're going to do a little Historic Fest recap, and then, because it's basically been all summer since a History on the Table episode has come out, just a little chat about war games or Premier League, wherever we go. Who knows?
Yep.
So
sounds good.
Well, good. Yeah, and there's gonna be links down to Kevin's YouTube stuff down in the show notes. I highly recommend it. I thought your latest Next War video was fantastic. It highlights the Next War tournament scenario, which we're gonna be talking a lot about. But that was kind of your main course at Historic Fest this year, right? Like, you took place in the Next War tournament.
Yeah, that was the bulk of the time, and really glad I signed up for that. It is a bit of a time sink, but being able to dedicate so much time to one game at a con like that, I think there's a lot of benefits to doing that. Played some other games we'll talk about too at Historic Fest, but the big one was the Next War tournament that Mitch Land, the designer, helped host. So that was nice.
Yeah, so let's get a little rundown. I guess before we get a rundown, I have to say that if I was going to pick a game to run a tournament at a war game, Next War is like right in that same pile as like OCS or GOS or as like the things you don't pick as a tournament.
Yeah. I was wondering where you were going to go with that, because it's not the first thing that comes to mind. You're just like, hey, let's do a Twilight Struggle tournament or something. Historic Fest. No. Combined arms in modern combat, please.
Yeah, right. With advanced rules.
Yes.
Like standard rules I could see, but no, the tournament scenario. So tell us a little bit about the tournament scenario.
Yeah, so what the designer's done is taken the Next War Poland game, and it was actually a community member, Griznok, I believe is what he goes by, that took the game and designed a tournament scenario based off of kind of the Suwalki Gap analysis, the Suwalki Gap theater in Poland. And it's a 3-turn scenario between NATO and then the Russian Federation and Belarus as they try to invade and capture key cities, victory points in Poland. And it's really pretty fast back and forth. There's not a strategic display like you would have in other Next War full campaign games. So that takes a lot of the time out of it. And it's not too counter dense. Each side's probably playing with 20 counters or something like that. So pretty manageable from that perspective. But to your point, Matt, Next War is just a game that has so much in the sequence of play. I mean, 2 full pages that you have to go through for each turn of first strike phase, second strike phase, initiative move combat, basic move combat, right? You keep going through, and it adds up to a lot of time, but it shows the game off very well, and you get to see all the advanced rules in kind of a mini setup, which is really nice.
Yeah. And I'll just add, this is the third go of this scenario and kind of tournament play. So Historic Fest the year prior, the problem there was we did an elimination tournament and everyone just assumed they would lose. And so like we had people sign up to play on Friday and then they'd fill up their Saturday and Sunday because they're like, oh, I just assumed I'd lose. And so I think the round robin idea was a great idea. That was the right way to go. And then Mitch is running an online tournament with the same scenario. Does it implement, or does it have the option to implement any of the supplement stuff like cyber warfare rules, or do you think that it's not viable for a tournament setting?
Yeah, as is, it's already really close to being around 5 hours to play. Adding anything more into the thing, and it's just too hard to do in a tournament, I think.
Is that what your plays were for both rounds? Was around 5 hours? I mean, barring any like breaks or anything like that.
Yeah, if you
I know
take
there were
out
some naps taken.
yeah, yeah, no, there were some naps taken. If you take out lunch hours and such like that, 5 hours was probably the average once everything was set up. So folks did
Okay.
set up the night before for both days too, and that really helped speed things along. I think the other part with the tournament scenario is, like you mentioned, it's gone through a couple iterations. It is balanced. We had
Good.
multiple draws, and for context, there's 12 victory points on the table in each of the scenarios. All games came down to within one victory point.
It's wild.
Right. So it was tense, and the die rules for the winner of a couple of those matches were big events there at the con, as everybody wanted to see how that ended.
So what's this isn't always the case, and if you talk to Rex, he may tell you otherwise, because we're playing like something of Republic of Rome or Republic of Carthage. He kept using this phrase as greedy Matt, which I promise you does not exist. But generally, when I'm playing like a big meaty war game like Next War,
Yeah.
victory isn't really in my mind when I play that game. If I'm playing a 103 turn scenario of OCS, yeah, the victory conditions aren't like at the forefront. So like to take
Yeah.
these now, if I'm playing something like ASL and you're like, hey, well, this is going to take 2 hours and you have to do this, like that's how I'm going to play it, and I'm going to play to win. I remember I was playing in an ASL tournament one time, and I told a guy like, hey, if you don't do this, the scenario just says I win if I step on this hex. You really shouldn't do what you just told me you're going to do. And like that's even in a tournament deal. Like, but I'm not that kind of player, especially in big games. So what's the appeal to you of playing Next War in a tournament scenario, or was it more just a chance of playing Next War for 3 days straight?
I think the first kind of motivation was to play Next War for such a prolonged period consistently,
Yeah.
with individuals that knew the system. So all the participants were very familiar with the game and the system. There wasn't any teach and play, although of course we're always happy to do that. So that did, I think, add more of a competitive edge than you would otherwise see in that type of environment, where there were such fine margins that you wanted to really try to eke out that last percentage point or that last die roll modifier to really try to take the day. And that second round we had, like the game between Mark and Don, that was tense. That was close.
It sounded like it.
they were going at it. They were having a great time. They were both great participants, great players at it. But boy, the competitive fuel was really, really going there. And I think that just speaks to the scenario design, less of the game, because the other situations where I've played Next War face to face locally with friends, solitaire, obviously, or just even online and Vassal, it's never felt like that, right? It's too large of a game for you to sit there and go, I really need to get that one city or the whole game's done, right?
Yeah, it has always felt to me a little bit, and as you get more familiar with a lot of games, it becomes less of this, but you're pulling levers, right? You're seeing what types of invasion works, how you want to allocate warfare. I do not think I have, or I know I don't have the expertise or the knowledge of Next War to even be able to make the overall strategic decisions for like quote unquote competitive play. Like it's all good fun. It's not like,
Yeah. And both all participants were kind of sharing, did you think about doing this with that HQ or with that artillery? You could support that in the next combat phase or something. There was that going on back and forth, but even all of those recommendations were with the intent of let's get every last, DRM or inch of progress that we can on the map out of this.
Yeah.
It's a really, really well balanced scenario. So kudos to the designer and kudos to Mitch for putting that together.
And I think that's a one again for the designer and Mitch refining it. That's a big ask to refine the advanced game to a 5-hour, 6-hour scenario that can be, one, is balanced, and two, still capture the essence of the advanced game. So you still have more detailed air. You're not just using air points or anything like that. That's a big undertaking, and it sounds like they've pulled it off.
Yeah, you take other games, the 40X Zocbon series or BCS or something like that, and you might have a couple of tables that you end up rolling on for various game mechanics. The advanced game is a 4-page sheet of tables that you have to use to play. And I don't take that as a critique. Plus some tables from the standard game. There are so many. I think I'd love to get like a Mark Herman's perspective or something right on the mathematics behind all of that, because he's always so intrigued in, what are the chances that this happens and these rolls go that way. I don't know how you calculate that with this game. It's
Well, I don't
so
know how you do it either, because of Mitch's his combat curve's not on a, or his combat results are not on a curve, right? Like you have those results in the, where a 3 might not be as good as a 2 or a 4, which is
right.
always interesting.
Yeah. Does the DRM even matter? Because that might just get you a worse result.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what do you I mean it's all we've approached Next War in 5 different ways now. Yeah, that's right.
It's the
That
fifth year.
this was the 5th year of Next War Con.
Yeah.
The first year was everyone just play what you want. The second year was a combined game, which has its own hurdles. I know Mitch is particularly keen in getting back to that model. The third year was everyone play what you want, but you're going to pick up points for doing X, Y, or Z. And then last year was single elimination. This year was round robin. What do you think, just from your own perspective, what do you think the best method of making Next War into a con experience would be?
Yeah, I think it should probably change every few years to keep
Sure.
it a little fresh, right?
Mhm.
But I would love to see in the next year or 2 years more of a larger game setup or combined game setup, because there were a lot of folks that had never experienced Next War that would walk by and would be really curious about it.
Mhm.
But it's not something, right, where you can sit down and do a teach and play in a couple of hours. So you have these two wide spectrums of, you either have to commit yourself to, 15, 20 hours of the con of being really competitive and doing this tournament scenario, or you have something where it's a combined game and you sign up and say, hey, I'm going to come in, learn, play for 4 or 5 hours on Saturday, but I'm not going to be committed on Friday or Sunday or anything to doing anything with the game.
Mhm.
So I think that might allow maybe more folks to be able to engage with it and have a higher participation level into the con experience with Next War. And really, it's about that exposure and that, getting the word out about what the series is like, because it's an intimidating one. I mean, if
Yeah.
you've got it on your shelf, it it's not the simplest thing that you're going to be able to put onto the table, and that's the balance you have for that's the back and forth you have of a game with complex mechanics that really illustrate combined arms in a modern era versus something simpler like an SCS that's just, this is dice chucking and I'm
Yeah.
just going to have fun.
Right.
And it's good to learn those more complex ones, I think, with others where you've got those experts that can teach you some of those more complicated aspects and dimensions of the game. And with Mitch there too, just being able to get him
Sure.
involved and have him teach folks would be great, I think. So I'd probably say the next year or two would be great to get more of a full advanced game campaign going, or some type of combined game so more people could be involved. And also those that do want to participate in Next Word don't necessarily have to commit to doing it for the
Yeah.
majority of the con. Because
Right.
that is a little bit of a hurt, right? I mean, I we'll talk about this later, but I only had, I think, 3 other game titles that I played at the con because Next War really was just the dominating factor for me.
And that's always the issue with the approach I want to take with Historic Fest, and the, like, Mike Denson, who did take on the challenge of, oh, anyone can come play in the last 100 yards tournament and I'll teach you. Um, I think Mitch could do that with the standard game. I don't know if he wants to do that, but like the standard game with Next Door, I think you could do, because it's such a different undertaking than the advanced game. But that's the challenge Mike Denson took on. But then again, he was then asking every last 100 yards player, because it was round robin that year, to then commit
Right.
all week into that, and then that's awesome once. And so then I think you do have to go back, because then the next year we did a giant combined game with 6 or 7 people throughout the day. Like, people came in and out.
Yeah.
And that was a fantastic experience. But there's a select breed out there that probably would be like, oh yes, I want to play Next War tournament scenario every year, 4 days in a row and never let up the gas.
Yeah. I think if we did another tournament scenario as well and more of a competitive feel, you'd really probably want another scenario, because I think all the participants this year have definitely left going, I've seen most of the strategies and tactics and stuff, and it starts to replay a little bit the same because it's just not that large of a game by its nature to fit into the time period.
Plus, all of you are in the online tournament, I'm almost certain. If not, 3 of the 4 of you, I think, were.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, and that's another great medium to do this type of tournament scenario, I think, because Next War has a huge international audience, is what I've seen too. And you're just not going to get a lot of the folks from Europe, Southeast Asia, etc. No offense, Matt, but to fly into Olathe, Kansas.
Well, they should. They should.
They probably should, because you have free mugs there, but it's not something that is probably too likely.
Very good. Anything else you want to say about Next War? Looked like a blast this year. I love that both the opening round games came down to roll offs, which was amazing.
I would probably just add lastly, and it's less related to the con, but more so the scenario. If you do want to get into the Next War series, start with this scenario instead of a full campaign game for the advanced rules, would be my recommendation after having played it a few times. You're not making the same commitment than to a 40-hour playthrough of a campaign game. And if you've got Next War Poland, everything you need for the tournament scenario comes in the box.
Yeah, it's a smaller scale way of saying start with India, Pakistan, right? Because India, Pakistan like takes out the naval rules and things like that. And so here you're taking out some of the elements and you take out the strategic map. So if you're unfamiliar with Next War, if you're playing the advanced game of Next War Poland, you have this whole strategic display and you're dealing with ships, and it's a lot. And it's one of the reasons why I still prefer India, Pakistan, because India, Pakistan hits the sweet spot for me. It's enough information, whereas a lot of the other games, for me, I love them, but it's a lot for me.
Yeah, so, exactly. You got to get your hands on a copy of India, Pakistan first, though.
That's tricky. Mine's in that bottom shelf right there is where India, Pakistan is. It's never leaving. Like, it's if I narrowed my collection down to each series could have one game, it's no brainer. Now, I want to play around with Iran, but I don't think it'll dethrone India, Pakistan.
No, and that Iran game Mitch brought looked just
so good.
Huge. I can't wait for my copy to come. I'm just checking the status page every day to see where's it at.
Yeah, beautiful map. Beautiful. He had it set up for the first day and a half or so before that table got reclaimed. But fantastic looking map. So props to Mitch and all the work and all the developers and the playtesters that have pushed Next War Iran. And for those who are like 5 deep into the series or whatever, it really sounds like Iran is a fresh spin on Next War, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And although we hope none of these ever go hot, it is also something that, you can certainly tie back to current events and look at the hardware and such and how it's deployed in situation in theater, and that has an interest level for a lot, I think, of the series collectors too. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some of the like practicability of it, which is like for some reason that's why, well, maybe not for some reason, but Cold War gone hot stuff isn't my jam usually. Now, if it's a good game, I like it, but Next War isn't more interesting to me.
We'll talk Cold War goes hot later.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. So Historic Fest is not just Next War anymore, although it was born out of Next War. We did play other things, and we had a great convention. I enjoyed the experience. I played a ton of games. There was one game I cut short because, like, my Saturday, I packed in like 4 or 5 multiplayer games, and it was a lot. But it was also a glorious time. And there was some really cool stuff going on that I wanted to mention. Rex ran a wonderful close action game on Thursday night with 8 people or 10 people. It's either 4-a-side or 5-a-side, doesn't really matter. Yeah. But I just saw like these 2 guys, David and James, right? And I'm not going to shout out everyone who came to the convention, but I talked up Tank 7, which is a delicious farmhouse ale in Kansas City here. And if you don't know about Tank 7, it's delicious, but it's also got a much higher alcohol percentage than like your High Noon or your Guinness or your Bud Light. And those guys were sucking those Tank 7s down. And every time they walked back in the room, I was just like, they're in for a world of hurt. But then sure enough, the next day, about 5 o'clock, here they come in with more Tank 7s. And so they told me that they had to change the keg out on the Tank 7 is what one of
Yeah.
them told me. So I'm like, yes,
For
we did it.
for those who couldn't attend, how I would describe Friday night in that close action game would be, from the perspective of everyone who wasn't playing, is there were a lot of quieter 1, 2, 3 person blackjack tables going on in most of the room. But then there was a frat house playing craps in Jersey, and really it was just close action.
It's a,
Um,
it's a little close to home. That's a story where we went and played craps one night, and it was we were exactly that.
yeah,
So that's amazing.
that's the impression I got from the outside. I didn't get to participate, but it looked like a great game. And those minis,
Yeah, Rex
just
did a great
massive
job with
props to
those.
Rex for those minis.
Yeah, so let's just start with the best. Other than Next War, and I know you had a and I guess you don't have to exclude Next War. Like, what was the highlight of the whole weekend for you?
I think probably the highlight was getting to do 2 teach and plays, although one had a little bit of an asterisk on it, on BCS
Nice.
for both Chris and Brian. And just that's such a fantastic system we'll talk a little bit about later. But we did Era Court, we did the Loonville scenario as a little bit of a teach and play, did the first 2 turns of that scenario, and went went really well. And just seeing folks come new into a series, and as you can see it click for them, and BCS is so unique too, and you have to break out a new dictionary and learn a new
Yeah.
vocabulary, which
Yes.
that's something you talk about, but it's fine, it's good once they catch on to that. It's a great game, and I think both at the end of it we're really excited to maybe go pick up a BCS title, and although Brian already has BCS titles, and really get into the series a little bit more. So that was probably the highlight for me, was playing Era Court and BCS.
So I would my real highlight, and this isn't just lip service. And I know we talked about this on Friday because on Friday I also did my part in helping empty the Tank 7 cake.
Yeah.
Is really seeing, not only meeting the new people, there were so many like new cool people, or people that I met on the Discord, like yourself or Ross and Mark and all these people who came that we knew from History on the Table Discord, and you get to meet them for the first time in person. That is a highlight, as well as the people I would never get to see that come back every year. That's my highlight. I know that's not what people want to hear about. They want to hear about the games. So let me tell you about Weimar, which this is pretty sweet, because if you go back into the early episodes of History on the Table, I think one of our either like our first or second, what are we most looking forward to, Weimar was on that list. And so Weimar, if you haven't seen it, is the beautifully overproduced game from Matthias Kramer and Spielworks, and Capstone Games does the American version of it. And it covers 1918 Germany going forward. And the components are out of this world. It's a 4-player card-driven political game. And it's got a little bit of, have you played Churchill?
I love Churchill. Right behind this chair is Churchill. Yeah.
Nice. So in mine, I've not played Churchill, but my understanding is in Churchill you have these different issues that move along this track as each side tries to. So that's one part of Weimar. The other part of Weimar is putting. We have a visitor down here tonight, which I love. I don't know what he's in over there, but he's got something. And the other part is just exerting your political influence. And you're doing that through taking action points or playing events. It was a knife fight. It was really interesting in the sense that if I start out as one of the government factions, you're on the teetering point. Are we going to fall into anarchy? Are we going to make it, at least for those first couple turns? And then I think you have a shift in identity, right? So there's 2 government parties, there's 2 anarchist parties, and then there's a nationalist side and a socialist side. And as one particular government party, I started out doing everything I could to help the government, but then my identity as the game went on kind of shifted towards the distance between me and the government started to grow, and my affiliation with the nationalist radicals, not Nazis, but the other national radicals
Yeah.
started to grow. And so then I'm playing like two sides, and they have their own objectives. So like I want the radicals to work with me, but I don't want the government player to see it. And so like this like split personality where you have to play both sides, and I can't break off from the government totally because we can't let the whole country slip into ruin.
Yeah.
It
There's
was
a co-op
really,
element, right?
oh, absolutely. But your partner changes, and you have to keep the country afloat, because if you're stuck in the government, you're going to lose points, and no one wants to be in the government. There were chances where other parties had the majority of parliament, but they kept refusing to take the government. So we kept sticking with the same old government, and that was like a victory point negative. It's got upsides being in there, but anyways, game ended after turn 3. I loved it. It was major highlight of the convention. Super great game.
So a mechanic that Churchill has, I'm curious if there's anything like this in Weimar Republic, is you can't win by too much. There's interesting kind of victory conditions, right? Where if you go and run away with it, the assumption is that all the other parties kind of gang up on you at the end after the game. Is there anything like that in the game?
They're only in the sense that everyone has to keep the government afloat. If you're too selfish with your actions,
Yeah.
Germany will fall. And if
Yeah.
if you don't have the most victory points, then so I guess there's a little bit like where if you have the most victory points and you're not in part of the government, 2 players will make up the government. Then you have less of an interest to keep the government afloat. But everyone else, the 3 other players, are doing everything they can. And so you can't be that selfish. But there's nothing like penalizing you for winning too well. No.
Got it. Okay.
But there's always a split decision, right? It's always, okay, you won the economy issue. Are you going to do something to help inflation or help poverty? Or are you going to take another seat in parliament? And it's either or. It's not both. And so very interesting game with a lot, just every decision space I found incredibly interesting.
Nice. Yeah. Is it something that you would do at a future con as a replay, you think, next year?
Yeah, I'd book off the whole day for it, or like 9 to 5.
Sure.
Which is really the way to schedule a convention like this, right? Like one all day game, break for dinner, come back and play something.
Do something lighter in the evening.
Yeah. I would absolutely do this. I do question it's an expensive game. I think it's over $150.
Ooh.
And I do wonder, although I don't know how fast you would ever hit this, just how much depth it has. So like the turn 1 kind of political card that everyone's like kind of sees, oh, this is the issue we're going to be resolving in turn 1, will always be the turn 1 card. And I think each faction has about 20 total cards. You're going to start, I think, with about 10, and then you can bring in new economic policies or more security policies through card play or through your agendas. But that's kind of it. So there's not like this massive, there's all kinds of stuff on the map, but there's not a very deep card pool.
Well, leaving open the door for an expansion or for somebody to homebrew it. Not going to name names, but leaving that open a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, so I thought about that. I was like, well, you just throw out an expansion, right?
Yeah.
But how do you expand on? This takes you all the way up. So everyone can lose if Nazis come to power.
Sure.
And so I don't know how much expansion, but as a core game system, just throw it on Mars. Or I mean, Coin's doing it now. Just throw it on Mars and then leave it as a.
Yeah, every series, next game, put it onto Mars.
Sure, right. If you want to be wild, go with Neptune. Sure, go crazy.
Maybe we won't get into physics tonight, Matt. Yeah.
Don't let your dreams be dreams, Kevin.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. Hey, on your Thursday night, this was hilarious because I'm sitting there, I'm playing PAX Ren. Another fantastic experience of the convention. This was 4-player PAX Ren, which is just a knife fight. Who knows what's going on? And it was good. It was very good. But I look over and you are setting up a game of Red Strike.
Yeah. Yeah, why not? Because that's one of the smallest games that VUCA's ever developed, and you can get that knocked out in a 4-hour session, right? No, so I did Red Strike with Andrew, who's local to Kansas, there where the convention was, and he was kind enough to bring the game, so I didn't have to bring onto an airplane a 90-pound box of Red Strike, all 3,000 counters or whatever it is, and we had gone back and forth a little of, maybe we do a couple of. Well, actually, before I go into that, I'll say the game has scenarios that are broken up into kind of three types or three classes of scenarios. You have exercise scenarios, which are kind of teach and plays of mechanics that you can play through. They're all 8.5 by 11 map sheets, so small table front print, very low counter density, etc. Then you have battle scenarios, which are generally, I think they're mostly one mapper, one traditional map size. Maybe you've got 100 counters or 200 counters on the map for those. And then you have the campaign games where it's, hey guys, we're going to use 2,000 counters as we play this out across 4 maps. And it's just massive, right? Well, we've gone back and forth of maybe we do a couple of exercise scenarios. Maybe we get ambitious and try a battle scenario. And I think Andrew and I are both cut from the same cloth of, why the hell not dive straight into the deep end, even though we can't swim?
Naturally.
So we set up the first battle scenario, Full the Gap, and it had, I think it was about 200 counters, if I'm not mistaken. And we got that set up in an hour, something like that. It took a while.
Because Andrew had already started.
Yeah. It and again, kudos to Andrew for having everything prepped and organized and all that, because that certainly saved us some time. And we got into the first turn, maybe a third of the way through sequence of play or something like that, and go, we're not going to finish the first turn tonight. Like we're going to be lucky if we get through half of the turns. We said we wanted to do something where we could say we finished one part of Red Strike.
Excluding setup. Because like you finished setup.
Yeah, we got some great pictures of what it looks like set up. So that was an accomplishment. Good. So we went back to an exercise scenario, the 10th exercise scenario, probably 20 counters or so. And we finished that. I think it was in 2 game turns. It was all ground combat with helos, but no other air support. So it wasn't a full combined arms, but Red Strike is a Cold War Goes Hot combined arms game set in Central Europe, published by VUCA Simulations, and it's going to be part of a series. So they're coming out with expansions and new titles and such. So on my list for next year is I try to do or focus on one series every year. Next year, I want it to be Red Strike, and hopefully one of those expansions comes out next year. But it was a great time playing there. Again, we didn't spend 6 hours mastering the system or anything like that. We just both had the objective of get it to the table, help each other learn different aspects of it, because neither of us were fluent in the mechanics. And it accomplished that goal. And I'm hoping to get it up sometime this fall and maybe do one of the battle scenarios. I don't think I'll do a campaign, but just try to get running and sprinting right when 2025 hits with a full campaign game.
So obviously then you saw enough because, that's like your thing, right? On YouTube, you're doing these deep, long, extended plays and dives into... and they're not always like the most, like Next War is obviously, the advanced scenario is very mechanically in depth, but Downfall is just this big meaty game that really isn't that, like, obviously there's a lot going on. I'm not going to downplay it. But anyways, so you do these deep dives, investigations, and explorations of these games and systems. You saw enough from Red Strike. At least in building up to it, and that little teaching scenario you played with Andrew, that you're like, okay, I want to...
This is it. Yep. Yeah, I would say it has a lot of similarities to Next War. Not saying that, they stole concepts or anything. And of course, it's based off of Mark Herman's Golf Strike. So a lot of mechanics were already proven and well done. It's a game, though, that the combined arms element is just fascinating to me of how you do that. And naval during this time period, I think, will be a very interesting simulation. So I'm excited to see how that goes and how it affects, supply and, force projection along the coasts and such of Northern Central Europe. It'll just be interesting. But no, you could accuse me of most games I play, I want to commit to it over months. I
Mm,
might not play every night, and
sure.
I often won't finish, but I like big maps. I like big campaigns. I like getting that all set up. You give me something like a game that has no terrain, like a Min of Iron or something like that I can finish in one night, and I go, it finished too early, right? I wanted more. I wanted something at a little bit higher level, and that's why I don't like tactical games generally either. Is
Mm.
I generally like to have something that goes a little longer. And Red Strike, my goodness, that fits that bill. That's massive. So it's
Love
going to
it.
be good.
Love it. Glad you got to play it. That's awesome. I mean, and a gorgeous looking game
Oh
as you
my
come to expect from VUCA.
any VUCA game that has any solitaire suitability whatsoever is an instant buy for me.
Wow.
If listeners have never bought a VUCA game, just buy one just to see the production quality, and it'll really force you to demand more from other publishers. It's just fantastic. But speaking of production quality, there was a giant mouse pad of your favorite game at Historic Fest.
Well, we got to talk about this because this cracked me up,
Yeah,
and I want to give props to Ross who drove up from Oklahoma and Sean who flew in from North Carolina. And Sean's not a listener, so he didn't know the whole shtick that like the U.S. Civil War is the first or second best game ever made.
of course.
And they tell me they're like, we blew up the map because and again, I like his journey. This guy Sean like just got it, and I may be misquoting some stuff in it. If I am, I apologize. But I think his journey into Hex Encounter wargaming is relatively new,
Mhm.
and I think it must have been Ross or someone turned him on to U.S. Civil War, and right away he's like, "Oh, this shit's too small." And then so he decided to blow it up, but it wasn't like 120%, 150% blown up or anything like 2-inch hexes like Rex's close action game. No, the blow up on the mouse pad was like 102%. So just enough where you can't fit two counters side by side close enough, and then blurry enough where you couldn't read the
Oh
hex
my
numbers
god. Yeah.
anymore. But I was like, I love the effort. And so I didn't play in this. I gave some rules wrong on Friday night, deep in the tank sevens again, but I did watch it a lot. And just what's amazing, they came in with a game they were already in progress in. They played, they re-racked, and then they started going again. And then at the end of the night on Saturday, because they were leaving Sunday, they were there writing down all the hex compositions to keep it going. And the reason this is on my list tonight is I shit you not, Sean, not knowing my whole shtick, at one point in the convention, I don't remember when it happened, goes, "Damn it, this is the best game ever made."
I don't
And
believe
I, yeah, he doesn't listen to the show, so I can't prove it. He's like not in the Discord, he can't confirm it, but I swear, without any prompt from me, he said that.
I don't know who the Sean is because all I remember from Historic Fest was Ross playing solitaire by himself on that giant neoprene mat.
just showed up to Historic
Yeah.
Fest and played solitaire with. Yeah, just
And
how deep were you in that tank seven?
yeah, their first game ended pretty soon. Was that Friday night that it had already
Yeah, I
finished?
think they re-racked on Saturday.
Yeah. That that was cool to see that they got two different games in, and one ended up being a little bit more balanced, I think, in their playthrough. I don't know enough about the game to have seen what the map looked like and such, but
I think the writing was on the wall in the game one where the Union was going to fall behind the objective schedule. But that has always been my favorite thing. Is just their different approaches and strategies with how to be aggressive as a Union. Are you going naval? Are you going here? Are you going there? And like in one game, the first game, I think like Missouri was half conquered by the South. And then like in the next game, like then Arkansas was half con. It's just wild, and I love that the sandbox they played in. So that was just hearing someone who's not just circle jerking me talk about how good U.S. Civil War is, like a complete outsider, is just like, that's amazing. I do want to say I played Cthulhu Wars, which has been on my bucket
okay.
list forever. And this is not U.S. Civil War. This is not Next War. This is not any. You can't rely on strategy going into this because it is. Whereas Pax Ren 4-player was a knife fight, this is a knife fight, but then like someone's knife will turn into a shotgun, and then the next guy's knife turns into like a tactical nuclear warhead or something like that. Like it just ramps up and turns into utter chaos. It was everything I ever wanted. It was amazing. We were fortunate enough to have Mike Heckman run the game for us and just like, here's what you need to set out in, just get going. which is like my favorite way to learn a game. Like, just give me the basics, and then if you can, just teach me. It was amazing. Whereas that wasn't the only big dumb box full of minis that I played. And so the reason I'm bringing it up, I played Cthulhu Wars,
Yeah.
and then I played about a turn and a half of 2 Wars of Dune, War for Arrakis, which is based off of War of the
Game
Ring.
looks great. Yeah.
Oh, it looks great.
There were a lot of minis at the con, actually, now that I think about it, more than I would have expected going in.
Which is funny because we've tried to have minis people come in and run minis event.
Yeah, just
And then like no one plays.
Really?
So like one year, I think a guy 2 days set up like a big minis campaign, and like I think some people joined in. He wasn't just sitting there the whole time, but every time we've tried to do minis, it never gets traction. So I've just like quit trying.
They had minis for the Panzer North Africa. I think was that Friday or Saturday.
Well, he had a 3D map.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, like map. So his terrain scale, the different elevations were 3D. Yeah, Les did that and came up with his own like.
Then you had Star Wars Rebellion, which has great minis for a game of that size.
Close action.
One that I did at the tournament, actually, that Mike did a teach and play of was Forbidden Stars, which apparently is one of his favorite games. I didn't know that. And it's a 40K game that has great minis as well, great quality on it. So
yeah.
There were a lot at the convention.
Yeah, nothing. The closest thing to like true miniature gaming would have been close action, right? Everything else is just board games that are overly produced.
Aesthetics.
Yeah.
We'll have to do Armada or X-Wing or something next year.
I love that because I bought someone's collection when they were getting out of it, and haven't played it since I bought it. I bought it like pre-COVID, and I played it a while, anyways. So Cthulhu Wars is delivered on everything. Dune, War for Arrakis. I need to see more from it, but then again, I don't know if I will. Also, it feels like it's a game where it's like Cthulhu Wars needs to be snappy and short because there's no strategy, right? Like, just have fun. You're playing Cthulhu, just go eat things. I think Dune War for Arrakis needs to be that too. You're playing, and there was a learning game, so I'm not like, no one is at fault here. It's a learning game, but also like, hop on the giant worm and just see what happens. You know, like don't like you're rolling combat dice that can be daggers, shields, or special effects. Like, there's not a lot of like, all right, if I do this, then my odds are this. Just go in there and like, you know. And so when it gets dragged out in a learning game, then it's like, oh man, if this is.
Have you played other Dune titles, and if so, how would you kind of rank it to those?
Well, again, we played 2 turns. It started as a 4-player game. One of the 4 players had to leave, so then I took over one side, that's a whole nother comment on it, like how the sides get split and they have different personalities. The classic Dune is the best, the one that got remade, the one from the 70s, the 6-player, that one easily the best. I could see this being better than Dune Imperium, which is the deck builder, which I like. I know a lot of Dune purists write it off. Rex, Mitch, a lot of people actually. This could be better, but it was also it was just after Weimar, and my brain was
there was a little bit of fatigue.
Well, and that was the other thing. The like, I don't know if I told you this, but like all throughout the weekend, like Thursday, I grabbed lunch with a couple guys. Like, I got to read these Dune rules. It's like, I'll do it Thursday night, and then like Friday's like, I got to read these Dune rules, and then like on Friday night, I wasn't even planning on drinking that much. I was like, oh, I'll just read the Dune rules tonight, and then before you know it, I'm not reading the Dune rules. So that was also part of the problem.
Friday night was a great social night at the con.
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks had the same plan as you, was kind of get ready for Saturday and stuff. And it just turned into, let's have a great conversation about everything we've been playing and what we got coming up.
Yeah. Which was, I mean, that was a highlight for me. I mean, Friday night in itself was fantastic. I'm trying to think if there's anything. We did Dutch Inner City. I think a couple people came into Dutch Inner City not ready for a good dicking like that. It takes a certain mindset to get the dick. And so I did feel bad, but I also feel like half the table got it. So PAX Rin, Dutch Inner City. Oh, Republic of Carthage. We need to talk about that, but finish your thought.
I was just going to ask about 1832. Was it that you had up on?
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah, Zach stomped. So I finally lost. I mean, we've only played it 3 years in a row, but I was 2 times undefeated. I gave everyone the proper starting cash this year, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, cheater.
Yeah. Well, everyone got more cash last year. It wasn't like some people did. We had an extra
Sure.
$100 to start. Still my favorite 18xx, and I was not in a particularly good position all game, but I still loved it. Just seeing different people pull different mechanisms. We also had like half the table were one person was new to 18xx, other people had just played like 1846. So it was an interesting dynamic,
Yeah.
as opposed to playing with like a repeat from the years before. And Rex, who is a master at 1832, was off playing Storm over Jerusalem.
Yeah, a couple of games of that going. I want to pick that up from MMP because
Sure.
it's a good time. You can fit it in, I think, on a good Saturday, and it's another one of those games that classifies it's probably good to indoctrinate Euro gamers into war games.
Sure, I can see that.
Yeah. I want to get into that at some point. But sorry, going back to, was it more Dick?
No, Republic of Carthage.
Oh, Republic of Carthage.
Republic of Carthage. So Republic of Rome obviously has taken the throne as greatest war game ever made. At least according to some people.
Yeah, asterisk.
And then last year we had the fine play of Founding Fathers. I think it left a lot of people disappointed, and so we went back to Rick Kelly, who is kind of like adopted this caretaker of Republic of Rome to make these spin-offs. They're available on GameCrafter. And so Republic of Carthage, if Republic of Rome is here and Republic of, let me get my hands in front of the camera, and Founding Fathers, so Republic of Rome, Founding Fathers, Republic of Carthage is like right in the middle.
Okay.
It's even more close to Republic of Rome, which is, we played through one game and failed miserably. Like our wars just got out of hand. And then we re-racked a 5-player game and had a blast. It's not quite Republic of Rome, but since I can't get Republic of Rome, it scratches the itch. It also has some really interesting mechanics and like taxation, which can be a nice tool to help raise funds for Carthage. And trading it's not a perfect mechanic in the game. It's kind of clunky how they handle it, but it's an interesting mechanic. Trading becomes much more of a thing, where it's non-existent in Republic of Rome. If you're unfamiliar with these games, they're 6-player cooperative games in the sense that you are cooperating to not die, to keep the Republic going, while negotiating and executing different power plays to put your family in the best position. Okay, so it's a game about negotiating, making deals, voting on things, going off, raising troops, fighting wars. So in short, Republic of Carthage did some interesting things, some things I really liked, but it still felt a little bit clunky. And it's also, I felt like in our second play, and we wrapped it up around dinner time in the second play, it felt like, at least at that point, we had gotten over the big hurdle, which in Carthage is you have to win enough wars to then be able to like you have to go win the Iberian Wars to raise Celt-Iberians, right? Or they're not in your force pool because you haven't conquered them yet.
Yeah.
And so if the wars come out in the wrong order, you get kind of screwed because you don't have the Celt-Iberians or like Numidians or whatever you name, right? Like you don't have them. And so it felt like we were over that hump. And I'd be curious to see that late era deck, the second deck, come into play, because at that point it just felt like the infighting is what was going to kill us. Like it wasn't the external threats. We were flush on cash. Things were going good. It was all of us being petty little assholes that were going to bring down Republic of Carthage.
Mid to late game.
Yeah.
So if I remember right, with Republic of Rome, there was a decent amount of kind of, I don't want to say special rules, but kind of add-ons and such. Is that fixed with Republic of Carthage, or was that needed at all?
No, there was a lot of, so like Rex brings in a lot of external components, mini poker chips, boxes, because you maintain like a bank on each senator you have. But you also have your own personal bank. And so like his little boxes and 3D counters, like those are all just chrome to trick out his copy. And those still go, we used a lot of his Republic of Rome tricks to help Republic of Carthage. Yeah. But it's a nice production. If you went on to GameCrafter right now, you'd still have a great game, even without Rex's dedication.
Yeah. Just see how much Rex is charging for a custom job.
Yeah, right, exactly. You know, his own little like Golden Spike Games thing going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, all in all, is there anything else you want to talk about or mention?
As we kind of talked about, the majority of my time was Next War. I think we've talked on that.
Yeah, I did. I guess there were some other little things. I was hoping to get a PAX Premiere game in, but that didn't happen. I did play Vita Yanagihara, the coin light game from GMT.
What's your reaction to that one?
I'm interested in it. So there's one faction that is very much like, don't give the new players this faction, and they start out and they're winning, right? And then they just get, not only do the players destroy, the other players destroy them, but they get invaded by the Mongols, and it's just constant. And so it felt bad all game. Like, I was just getting my ass kicked. But as I'm packing up the game, I was thinking I would want to replay this faction to be better with this faction. But they're very much like, they just get their teeth kicked in. Like, that's their role.
It's good to have those asymmetrical factions when you start, so that way you can have those different challenge levels, right? As you've got different levels of mastery of the system and you're bringing people into the game. It's always nice when you have that kind of imbalance, so everybody gets a good scratch of the competitive itch in the game.
So just as a counterpoint, Bill Simone, he said, I'm getting rid of my alt bridges burning, and this is replaced. And I think he said people power as well.
Okay.
This is his 3-player coin game. And I'm not there. Everyone, I've talked about all bridges burning ad nauseum. That's a little hidden gem for me, because most coin people don't like ABB, is what it seems to be. That's an overly broad generalization, but I think a lot of people share that sentiment. This doesn't even get close to all bridges burning for me, but I did like it, even after having a particularly bad play.
It would be a keep in the collection then.
Yeah, it's up there. You can't see it in the shot, but it's to the left of the Cthulhu Wars box that you just barely see up there. So yeah, right now it's still here.
Nice.
And we knocked it out, and then I bet you could finish in an hour.
Quick.
Yeah. It was really fast.
I think we'd gotten through like 2 elements of the sequence of play of one turn in Next War, and you guys were finished.
Nice. So that wraps it up. We had a great turnout this year. The venue, I do just want to mention, we used the new venue this year. I know, Kevin, you didn't get to see the last venue, but this venue was fantastic. It was great having a legitimate bar and restaurant next to it. The last couple of years, the restaurant, one year was just one guy running it, and the year before it wasn't much of an improvement. And so it was always really slow. This was good. The food was good. The location was great, just in terms of, local people would recognize a lot of the restaurants right in the area. I did try the barbecue place across the street, which is called The Rub, which is something that's in Kansas City and I've never heard of. It was fine.
Yeah, we went there. It was okay. It was a little quick to get the food. Big servings, though. My God.
Yeah.
Massive.
But not where I would send anyone. They're like, I'm getting barbecue where we go in. I'm not sending you there. If you're like, hey, I want to run across the street, where should I go? I'm probably going to send you to like Salty Iguana or something like that, which is like a Kansas and Lawrence staple of Mexican food. Anyways, it was fine. It was good. I was really impressed with the venue. I'm not making any promises about 2025, but if 2025 is on the docket, I would like to go back there for sure.
No, I think it was great. The location and just getting from the room and having the restaurant so close was excellent. And we even got a couple of converts from folks in the area and working there at the venue who were interested in the con, which was great to see.
Was it you? Someone told one of the gals over at the coffee shop about what we were doing, and her and her dad were going to come, but only she came.
Yeah.
And she played Border Reavers.
I saw that. Yep.
And like she had played board games and stuff, and like what's just amazing to me, and the reason I sound exciting is not the fact that I'm not like, oh my god, we had a girl there. It's not that. It's like, no, this person was just working across the street, and someone was like, yeah, you should come, and she hopped into Border Reavers, and the John Company game got canceled. She was set to play in that too. So like, and regardless of who they are, just like this outsider who'd never done any of these types of games, is just like,
yeah, we had another gentleman sit down and, for probably 20 minutes, listen to how do you play or what's Next War like. It wasn't actually a teach and playing stuff, and gave him a little tour of all the different games going on. And I think think he's probably going to be playing some this weekend, next weekend, if I had to bet. And just great to be able to see the hobby expand
Yeah.
a little.
The bartender.
Yeah,
I mean,
he was fantastic.
yeah.
He actually knows how to pour a Guinness too. It was great.
Yeah.
So
Oh, the bar service was fantastic.
it was.
Good. So
It was
we're
cold on that.
what's that?
It was cold, which is understandable because it was
Yeah, it
an
was really
ungodly
cold in there.
98 degrees outside, but it was really cold.
I'm saying it was cold, and you usually run high, and I'm a big boy, like but it was freezing in that room.
It was.
Yeah, like I think Mike Heckman went out and bought a quarter zip, but I think he said like the 3X was on sale, and like Mike Heckman's not a big guy, but I think he said it was like $13 or something like that. He's like, yeah. Just get it because it was that cold in that room.
Yeah, I think Mitch was actually just every now and then stepping out.
Yeah, right. Go out into the sauna.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have any control over that, but overall the venue was great.
No, it was
really
wonderful.
happy with everything. There was some really cool stuff that happened. Always there's hurdles and stuff to get over, but there was nothing major this year.
And the rooms were great too. So the block we had, you had space for a little table too. So it's actually able to kind of just set up some counter organization and all that in the room and had the table space for it, and all positive.
Yeah, it was good stuff. Okay, so we got into a pretty good conversation on Friday night.
Conversation
that I think maybe started as OCS and BCS and then devolved into OCS as a Normandy game, which we shared different opinions on. But I did want to kind of have, I didn't even really have a specific topic in mind, but just talking about like series gaming as a whole. One, I guess maybe we can kind of continue the conversation of OCS and BCS because, but before the next thing in the regular rotation of history on the table that we never got to was BCS. And so as someone who's played those systems a lot, what do you see? And we can kind of start here and then maybe branch out to bigger series discussion.
Yeah.
If you had to like pick a role for both OCS, Operational Combat Series, and again, if you're unfamiliar, these are series games from Multiman Publishing, meaning if you buy a game, there's a series set of rules that are going to give you 90% of the stuff you need to know, and there's game-specific rules that are going to add in your chrome and flavor and all that stuff. And so OCS is Operational Combat Series, and then BCS is Battalion Combat Series, both designed by the late, great Dean Essig. Both are amazing series, but I do think they fill different roles. So I just wanted to get your perspective. What do you think each of those series, what roles do they adopt?
Yeah, I think that the OCS series is, of course, at a higher level of order of battle and scale.
Of course.
And it gets a little bit more nuanced as you think about supply with it physically being an asset on the board. BCS, well, let me back up. Most war games, I think when you go into them, you sit there and say, I've got these 4 infantry brigades and this tank unit and all these different counters all along my front line, and it's my turn, and how am I going to use them all to be successful? In BCS, you sit there and go, I have these formations. How do I get these formations to work together to be successful?
Yep.
And that is the most distinguishing factor probably between the two, is that one is formation driven. The other is the more traditional, here are your units in the order of battle, and each game turn you get to just go through everything. And BCS, you're sitting there going, you know what, that formation gets to attack now because that chit was drawn or whatever mechanic you're using for that game turn sequence. And it doesn't mean that you get to activate everything all at once. It's not a I go, you go system. It's much more back and forth. So when people ask me about the two series or what's my favorite series, I say for solitaire, OCS is my favorite series because I can take all the damn time that I want during my turn to make my decisions and go into all the detail that I want to. But if I'm doing face-to-face, BCS is the answer. It's fast. It's back and forth. Everybody's engaged constantly. Just a fantastic system in that sense.
Yeah, I do think, and I know Rich and I have talked about this on the main show. and it's the same thing with Line of Battle, which is potentially one of my favorite series of all time if I played it more. But the problem is it's such a counter dense game like OCS, and when it's I go, you go, meaning there's interruptions and responses to things. I get that, but generally it means I'm gonna move all my stuff, and then you're gonna move all
Right.
your stuff, right? When OCS, and you get these amazing games out of OCS, and there's all the East Front stuff they're doing, but I'm thinking like Beyond the Rhine,
Mm-hmm.
which is like 4 maps deep.
You love Beyond the Rhine.
I love Beyond the Rhine, and it's thousands of counters, and a turn is going to be half a day. Like what? Or sorry, half a turn is going to be like someone's going to take their turn, and that's going to eat up half your day,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
Yeah.
wild, and that's bonkers, and I love it. But it's not ideal. It really is not. It's kind of we've had so much evolution in game design. It's a little dated.
Yeah, and again, I think the majority of OCS play that happens in the universe is people playing solitaire.
Yeah,
Either that or probably play by
play
email.
by me. That's what I was going to say. Yep.
Right. Yeah. But it's something where you can really enjoy that system and take your time with it when you're playing by yourself and not feel pressured. You have the opponent sitting on their side, or frankly, your opponent's probably gone to lunch or something like that while you're taking your turn in the larger games. And I don't say any of this is a critique, because it's my favorite series if I'm thinking about solitaire war games.
And you don't want it at Normandy, huh?
I don't want it at Normandy. So that's where this conversation went, was so OCS is currently in development with a game title of Cross-Channel Attack. It's designed by Mr. LeBlanc, who I believe is the same designer as Beyond the Rhine. Oh. And it kind of sparked this conversation of, do publishers always pick the right system or series for a theater of operations or the design of a game when they're thinking about a campaign or an operation that might have occurred? And Cross-Channel Attack, the start date is June 5th, 44.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it, and on the surface I go, that doesn't feel to me like it leverages the OCS mechanics that well. And we can get into some of that. But OCS, I traditionally think of it shines best on the East Front, North Africa as well. And they've done other great implementations. And I think Beyond the Rhine's a good game too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I think of D-Day and I sit there and I go, it was chaos those first weeks. Mm-hmm. It was just a jumbled mess. Units disorganized. Everything's cut off. It doesn't fit the feel in my mind of OCS. And I wonder, is there a different series that would have done a little better with that?
Yeah, well, probably. And where we ended up, for those that are curious, is that if you're going to do OCS D-Day, and the other problem is just how big a slog D-Day is. Bocage,
in every
bottlenecks.
Game. Every game has that contention of, oh my God, it feels slow.
Yeah.
And at a certain point in the game,
it will be a grind. And I think we decided on different start dates, but it's D-Day plus is where we settled in. Now, should MMP use the different system to do D-Day? Yeah, maybe. But like this is like 18 in OCS or something like that right now. Like you've done so much, and there's still plenty to explore. Don't get me wrong. Like OCS could still pick more obscure things. Finland, please, sooner rather than later. I know they're working on it, but come on, people. So like I give a little bit of pass to that, because it's not like, hey, this is the third game in our series, so let's do the most popular topic in wargaming,
right,
just because we want to shoehorn in it. Why it interests me, and I know we've devolved into this, and we've gotten past the BCS versus OCS, and I do want to say I agree with everything you said about OCS versus BCS, but it's OCS is this tactical puzzle, both in like tactical, like military tactical, like what are your objectives, what are you trying to do, but also this tactile puzzle. You're picking up supply and moving it around, and the thought of taking that kind of puzzle and that kind of thinking with OCS and throwing it at breaking through Cairn Turn and linking up with the 82nd Airborne or sieging Cairn, like that sounds amazing to me. And so I think you and Chris both said sword, not sword, oh my gosh,
Operation Cobra.
Cobra, thank you.
Yeah.
Sword Beach would be the ideal start point. And my point was like, you should do like D-Day +2. Like wave or do some random element. Do the Simonich thing. Like make beach landing and airdrops go like that. Like they
Yeah.
should happen so fast. And then make it where like the allies have a little bit of progress, but there's still those major roadblocks. Now, I do think it'd be a grind, but the idea, that thought of that puzzle, really interesting to me.
So I wanted to maybe spend just a minute too, Matt, because I wanted to come on the show and not embarrass myself. So I did a little research of
Oh,
what I could find for cross-channel attacks. So they're using the same scale as Beyond the Rhine, not the traditional 5 mile
okay. Right.
OCS. So it's 3.5
Yep.
mile. So that makes sense. I think that's a great decision. The second thing is, and all of this is of course tentative because these are just things I could find from updates from the designer and such. They're also using a similar mechanic to BCS with a MSR when you're thinking about supply that can get cut off, which I think is fascinating for this theater. That's a great game specific rule add-on. I think that's wonderful. And also I was glad to see it looks like one of the scenarios they have included is Operation Cobra.
As it should be.
Okay?
It should be.
So I just want to really stress this before I get any flack for it. I'm buying cross-channel attack. Mr. LeBlanc, love the game that you did with Beyond the Rhine. I'm going to go buy this too. But I do have some pessimism of just, is OCS the right system for those initial days of Normandy?
I was trying to look real quick what the scale, and I think I used to know this, what the scale of Normandy 44 was.
Oh, that's a good question.
3.8 kilometers per hex. So just a smidge more zoomed in
Yeah,
than
but not by
what sounds,
much.
no, not by much at all,
Yeah,
than what cross-channel attack will be. That's interesting. I will be all over this, especially if they give you something to just accelerate the D-Day landings. Because I
yeah,
think there's potential there. I don't think you're wrong, Kevin. I
yeah,
do think there is something to be said of like, if you're doing the full OCS gambit on like a beach landing, like you're gonna have a bad time.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, yep. And I can't wait to hear the feedback in the community again about artillery costs
Right.
and barrages in Normandy, because I think you take SCS Day of Days.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe the hours of my life that I've spent assigning artillery strikes in that game as a mechanic, and I'm trying to like correlate that back to cross-channel attack, and I
You are
worry
right.
a lot, right,
Right.
of trying to balance that supply consumption to break up that defensive line, hedgehogs that the Germans will have, the bocage, all of those things. You're going to need a lot of barrage
That's
to break through that. And that's the point of
even
contention.
post D-Day,
Yeah.
like D-Day plus until like, because then you have to bring in like naval barrages, like you have to,
Yeah.
and then so it's like you're just like, you want to talk about having long turns.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
I still want to see it.
And to an earlier point you made of, come on, give me OCS Finland content. There are two things with that. I would love for them to maybe focus more on single map OCS games.
Mm-hmm.
I still go back. Smolensk is one of my favorite titles. It's what I learned the system
Yep.
on. And I've done Third Winter 4 map, Beyond the Rhine, all of that. It's good to have the variety of, you don't need to commit to a 4 map to get the full experience. Cross-channel attack is 6 maps.
Holy shit. I didn't realize that.
Right?
It was amazing.
And we talked about this a little too. I worry that MMP as a design house has a little bit of a focus with their titles on big map, big game. And they look great at cons and the publicity that you can get from some of that. But is it just realistic that you're going to appeal to a large enough audience when most of the new titles, if you want to play the full game, you have to have a lot of table space and a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to do the full game. They've done some interesting counterpoints to that, and I think it was more of a fluke than an intentional thing. If you look at GCCW, when Atlanta's Ours came out, and then Roads to Gettysburg came out, and then in short, although it all blends together, I don't remember exactly the year Atlanta's ours was quickly followed up by Hood Strikes North, is what it feels like to me. I don't know those exact dates. But
Mm-hmm.
Hood Strikes North was a nice counterbalance. Although it's not my favorite GCCW, though I heard a very interesting, compelling argument as why Hood Strikes North is actually a very solid GCCW game. So that was interesting. But my point is that was a nice change of pace. Atlanta's ours always felt smaller than Roads to Gettysburg 2. But Hood Strikes North was this nice, hey, here's a little smaller thing, just like Smolensk was. I mean, it's that's the best comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And the magazine, which is sitting like right back up there, that I still need to dust off. Like that was a nice thing. I can't wait to dive into that someday.
OCS Luzon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I got that out and did the first turn or two, but had to take it down because I had to go to Historic Fest.
I imagine that.
Um, but no, it's interesting. And to your point too, I think Cross Channel Attack will be the 19th unique game in the OCS series.
Pretty close then. Pretty close.
And this is another question that I would have is, can we do some reprints, please?
Yeah.
Right. It take a look. I see at your bookcase there, Dak. How many people in the OCS community would just hop on DAC reprint or Case Blue or something like that and go nuts for it?
Right.
And those games secondhand are going $600, $700, $800.
That's wild.
Right. And DAC came out 27 years ago and has had one reprint.
Do you think it's as do you follow Magic the Gathering at all?
I used to a lot. I've heard there's been a lot of change to the cadence in their release of content.
That for sure. Like it's constant. Like we just had a new set and we're getting a set in September, right? Both mainstream sets. It's wild. They both look like great sets. But my point is, what I was gonna say, I wonder if MMPs, is it intentional? And I highly doubt this because it's intentional with Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
Or do they just want to bring the new thing out? I hope it's not the intentional thing, because what Wizards of the Coast intentionally does is, although they they've very slightly started doing it, they've always refused to acknowledge a secondhand market. Even though they had the reserve list where they're not going to print these cards, they've never said like a card has X value. Okay.
Right.
But they intentionally, how they release cards and reprints is what drives demand of certain sets, right? So like, is MMP clever enough to be like, hey, if we print another OCS game before, like 3 other OCS games before we finally give them that deck 2, are people going to buy it because they think it's going to skyrocket? Like I know people who buy 2 copies of GCACW games or 2 copies of ASL sets because they know they're going to skyrocket because they know it's so long between reprints. I doubt MMP is that thoughtful.
I hope not. Yeah.
I hope not too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and, a good comparison would be, take Herman's Pacific War. It's what, 5th edition with how many reprints over the years?
And maybe needs another one.
Yeah, and it sells out almost instantly because it's a good game. And I think things like DAC or Case Blue or Smolensk or something, they're good games.
Or
and
even what was the Reluctant Enemies, right? That's out of print. And that was for so long, it was like, oh, that's the good one to start with. You should start with Reluctant Enemies. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or do reprint Sicily too as well. I mean, like, put it in a box.
Well, they just did it in the magazine.
That's what I'm saying.
That one, yeah.
Slap it in a box. That's what I'm saying. Like, redo it, get it back out there, put it in a box, do a box version of it. Yeah. I do want to go back to an earlier thought where you talked about like the smaller one map deals. I know I have said this, but the Dien Bien Phu scenario from Korea is still probably my favorite OCS Korea I've ever played, or OCS scenario I've ever played. And that's small. So there's interesting, like, I love doing the big stuff, but there's so much, just like in GCSAW, there's interesting stuff to be done in the smaller scenarios. Obviously, the big campaigns are epic and awesome. You get these great stories, but small space OCS is interesting. So, like, if they did like a Carrington OCS scenario, I'm going to be all over that.
Yeah, or just so many things I'd love for them to explore that they haven't done yet. And I don't know enough about Order of Battle, I don't know if any of these are viable, but what about Poland? What about the Second Sino-Japanese War? Like,
sure.
What about Finland? Things like Crimea were fantastic. Could you do an entire Italian peninsula game, not just Sicily? there's opportunity there, I think, for them to.
I said Dien Bien Phu for Korea. I meant
Yeah,
Chosen
you did.
Reservoir. I meant Chosen because I was just thinking it'd be really cool if they did Dien Bien Phu. I was like, wait, I already said that. No, I meant Chosen Reservoir in Korea. Dien Bien Phu would be awesome. I mean, you'd have to do it way different, but I think they
Yeah.
could. So then I want to go back to, okay, so if it's not OCS, MMP, they have Day of Days, and they
Mhm.
have GTS D-Day.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to be at the operational scale, what or bigger, where would you rather MMP have taken it? Because your only other option really is BCS. Are you really just saying you want BCS D-Day?
Thinking about that, if it is going to start on June 5th, I wouldn't want BCS or OCS. I'd
Okay.
rather they just not make that part of the game.
Hmm.
And in cross-channel attack, you can even choose different landing sites.
Amazing. I love that.
Right? What I would love, though, is D-Day +5, D-Day +10 or something.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, would be really well done with a BCS title. And I think there's some evidence to support that they're taking MSRs and putting it into cross-channel attack, right?
Well, then, if you're in like D-Day +5, and because this is always an interesting thing in like playing Simonich's Normandy 44,
Mhm.
is blending your blobs. Like, because
Right.
so many things become choke points and grind fests, you're going to blend your blobs. You're going to cross the stream.
And historically, that was something that worked against the Allies, right? As they had those coordination challenges. And OCS doesn't have good systems to penalize you for that. BCS does.
This is a little off topic, but this is one of my favorite things from Rebel Fury. Have you played Rebel Fury yet?
No, I have not. I've played Waterloo, though, so I know the system.
So he doesn't bring it up in Waterloo, but Mark Herman makes an interesting point that I don't know enough about.
Mm-hmm.
That says, instead of penalizing you for blending your regiments or blending your divisions or blending whatever, I'm not going to penalize you. I'm going to reward you for keeping it together because it wasn't that big a deal. And so that could also be anyways, let's just as we talk about crossing the streams and stuff with BCS, it's like, well, it doesn't, like, they would still fight. They'd still be combat effective, I assume. I at least buy into his theory, especially at the Civil War scale.
Yeah, so what would you say then that you would like edit BCS to say if you don't have a coordination marker, you get a +1 DRM?
Yeah, something. Yeah, you gotta, because you change. Yeah, you do the inverse and make it less of a supply and command issue and more of just a bonus to make sure you're able to do what you want to do.
And this was another topic we had when we first talked about this Historic Fest is OCS, BCS, SCS. One of the greatest strengths of them is those series rules are solid. Yeah. You can go to any game and feel perfectly comfortable. You have so many exceptions in something like a Normandy scenario. It feels that you really weigh down than game-specific rules, and you're tacking on to this really solid foundation all this extra stuff. And that would work a little against it. Whereas what if MMP just did a game that didn't use OCS, didn't use BCS, and did an operational level Normandy and had a unique system, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit like if you look at Coin or you look at Levy and Campaign, and Paco will tell you that Plantagenet did not start as a Levy and Campaign game.
Right. Yeah.
And it's been adjusted to fit it, but also we've seen that where there's Coin games that are shoehorned into the Coin system, either because the designer explicitly wanted to hop on the success of Coin and ride that train to the moon and back, or they explicitly wanted to work within those design constraints. And I would argue that there's a number of Coin titles that would work better. And I'm not really going out on a ledge here, that would work better as other systems. So like sometimes that can work. And if we're talking like in the grand series, like just big picture, working within a series design constraints, like you're right. They should take the risk and borrow from it. You can say heavily influenced by OCS and BCS. You'll have some familiarity. It's okay to say that. It's your own games. That's okay, folks. And it's like, what is Carl Fung's SCS game about the Cold War gone hot?
Iron Curtain.
That's a pretty big departure from SCS. You're still within SCS in that it's it's much easier than something like OCS or BCS, but that's still you're getting pretty close to that. Like, hey, SCS, and that's going to give
You'll
you a
learn
mind
this
room.
game easily, but
Yeah,
we're not going to call it SCS.
yeah. No, I think you're exactly right, and that's just a hard decision for designers. Either they want to explicitly, and it's no different than someone strapping themselves to the OCS rocket or the BCS rocket, which everyone's burning brighter right now. You want to be in that hot thing that's going to sell like hotcakes instead of. I mean, look
And
at like Front Towards Enemy, right? Which is a game I love. That I feel like MMP for several years, and they literally did this for Historic Fest when they sponsored us, was just giving away. Like it was something that was always on sale. Does
well,
that
and I think
work? Sorry, I don't mean to keep going on, but
yeah,
maybe that works better if it's in a system or something like that. And that's an amazing game, but it's something that went out there on its own, which obviously is not MMP's strong suit. They like their series games.
and us the gamers, no pun intended, I think we
Nice.
probably influenced this
Sure.
because any BCS or OCS title is an instant pre-order for
Right.
me.
Right.
SCS is probably likely, but if they come out with Front Towards Enemy 2 or something.
GMT has that game now. It's set in the modern world, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know that that's an instant buy. I need research. I need to learn a little bit
Yeah.
more about it. So we kind of reinforce that with our purchase decisions of coin, levy and campaign, whatever. I trust it.
Yeah. Yeah. And for MMP, I mean, they've just like, why not do a new GCCW game? You know what your success is going to be. And especially in this, and they don't have, and this has been like this for a long way. And it's different with software, but games for years now have been this pre-order economy, right? It's no different than when everyone shit on pre-ordering video games. I get it's different, but MMP doesn't have the P500 structure. Not I know they have a pre-order structure. I understand that, and they have their own internal numbers that they want to hit. I get that, but it's not the same.
And I think part of that might be too that if you take the average GMT game versus MMP game, there's a different scale of complexity. Some exceptions, of course, you put Next War out there, but you can learn OCS in a teach and play or two. And after a couple of plays, you can start to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a long time to really be a master. I play a ton of OCS, and all the time I'm sitting there going, I was an idiot doing all of this.
Or you're still diving into the rule book or looking obscure things up. And
I would say less diving into the rule book. It's just how do you structure those coordinated attacks, the supply usage, the double turn, all of that. You kind of have a different tier of mastery of the system that is, I think a lot of GMT games you don't ever need. Take the Hunters or something like that. You've explored the depth of those mechanics after 6 hours of playing. And that's not a dig. I like the Hunters. It's a good game. It's a great solitaire game, but you don't need a different level of dedication or skill or mastery to really play test that.
Yeah, I would say to play test them. And then, so that's interesting. That's kind of because then if you take something like Sekigahara, right? Like you don't need repeat plays to master the mechanics.
Right.
So then does that mean that the mechanics get out of the way and allow you to master like strategy? And I mean, like that's, and that's going to be true of any game, but that's interesting.
Oh, wonderful chat on that.
Yeah. There's more to be unpacked there. I just think it's hilarious that it just evolved. And then like the next day, just like pulling random people.
Yeah.
Random people is Chris. Yeah. What do you think?
I did appreciate 2 people said Operation Cobra.
Yeah, they sure did. I just think that's too late. I think you missed some good stuff.
Hey, LeBlanc put in a scenario for Operation Cobra. There's obviously merit to it, Matt.
Oh, no. Do not get me wrong. I would play the shit out of Operation Cobra.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds amazing. But also, I want some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What have you been playing lately? You just started a new series.
Yep. So I got the Next War Poland tournament scenario up. It's just to my left, actually, and have a couple of videos still to go up onto the channel for that. I hope to finish in the next month or two. Downfall is perpetually on my table.
Yes.
It's covered up 90% of the time, but I'll pull that up and play a turn or two of that every, not a turn, a sequence of that every now and then. And then coming up is I want to get another BCS title in this fall. I got most of the way through the Panzer's Last Stand campaign game this summer, which I was really happy about. And I don't know if I'm going to do Valley of Tears or maybe Brazen Chariots, but I want to get another BCS title to the table this fall. And then Stellar Horizons, I'm probably going to do that first. Heard mixed reviews on it, but it's a topic. Sci-fi is an area I have an interest in, and it seems long and lots of dice and very repetitive. So I'm a little nervous about that, but it looks interesting. And the choice was to do either Stellar Horizons or High Frontier for all. My big head's blocking all of those. Land it with Stellar Horizons because I think it'll be a little easier to do solo, a little less or rules light compared to High Frontier for All. And High Frontier for All, I'd like to maybe do multiplayer in person before I do a solo big campaign of it.
We should try to make that happen. We had an interesting choice last winter. We considered Stellar Horizons over, and I'm assuming it was Rex because Rex always has the insightful ideas. That had like maybe why we shouldn't do Stellar Horizons, but it wasn't a bad thing. It was more like I think it deserves or maybe warrants more plays to fully.
It's interesting because it feels a little bit more of a 4X game than a war game in some aspects.
Sure.
So I'll just be curious to see how that plays out into the board game medium.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right.
What about you, Matt?
Oh, well, I don't know. I cleaned off. So like my table was full of Historic Fest stuff for a while now. And so everything was either vassal play or not. I don't know. I need to pick something up. Before I went on little summer siesta, For the People really caught my eye. Rebel Fury was played at Historic Fest, and then I was talking to a couple guys, and they were going to give Rebel Fury another go. And so Rebel Fury's been taking up a lot of space, like headspace. I want to get back into that, but nothing is other than I was cleaning off the table and stuff, and my copy of For the People was over there. I was like, oh, that. And then Mike Ekman we were talking about Pericles. I was like, oh, I still really want to. So there's a long list of stuff that I want to get into. Talking OCS has made me want to, pull out some Korea stuff. Or
you can do Luzon in just a day or something, right? So
oh, really?
Shot. Yeah.
I still think it's an interesting. Well, now I'm thinking like, okay, Chosen Reservoir, OCS tournament. OCS tournament. But round one is like Chosen Reservoir. Okay. Like you got it. So I guess then that's kind of one. I guess you can't do like you can't have one from Beyond the Rhine and one from Korea. You have to pick one game. But you got to pick a game that has like 5 different scenarios that'll work for it. Because I've always thought that like if I was this dedicated, this would be perfect for you actually, because this is like what your kind of videos would be great at is how good of opening can you get in XYZ scenario?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning,
that'd be interesting.
Like if you do Chosen Reservoir, I think there's a certain amount you could accomplish if you try different strategies. And so like what strategies do what? How do they play out? I think at least that's interesting to me. So maybe an OCS tournament is a bad idea, but
I think actually Crimea would be a great shout for that too, because it again smaller one map and it'd actually probably be less counters I think than Chosen Reservoir too. So I think it'd play a little quicker, but very resource constrained.
Okay,
which I think pressures then what's that perfect opening, or how perfect can you get the opening?
There seem to be scenarios that lend themselves to that. That just what can you do in an opening in the scenarios that feel like that chess matches, right? That have an interesting back and forth. And Chosen Reservoir has always felt like that. So
I,
no, there's nothing that's like. I mean, there's lots of non-war game stuff that's filling my headspace right now.
mhm.
But in terms of war games, I gotta find the next thing. I don't know what it is. I've been kind of like I've been burnt out over the summer, and so playing a lot of games last weekend was obviously amazing, and seeing some stuff rekindled some interest. But I don't know what I want the next thing to be to hit the table. I don't know.
BCS.
Yeah, should be.
I want to go back to and give a shout out. I'm also still playing with Don, who is perhaps the best opponent I've ever had the chance to kind of play against. Just all year, we've been doing Taiwan Second Edition testing,
Nice.
and that's going to be a great game if anybody hasn't put the pre-order in for that yet. But that's we're about 4 turns into the campaign game of Taiwan, and been a lot of fun doing that every week over
Nice.
Vassal remotely. So hopefully we'll have that finished up by the end of the year, so Mitch can finally have the test results.
Some feedback.
Yeah,
Nice. Very good. I'll figure something out. I mean the deal with BCS is I played it on Vassal, and then
yeah.
it was around my birthday. I clipped everything, got it organized. This is Valley Tier specifically, and then I was like, hey, and I set up this game day, and we're gonna play at the office. We're gonna use the conference room table and all this stuff, and then I had to go into the office anyways, and I had to cancel it. And so I've just been disheartened ever since that day. That's like, it's happening. I'm doing in-person Valley Tiers and it's all ready to go. And then it's just like, womp, womp, womp.
Well, I'll throw out another one maybe for you to think about, because I played this face to face a couple times in the last month or two, and it's from Nakamura's Red Box series that was originally republished with MMP, but it's now with VUCA, Traces of War and Traces of Hubris.
Yes. Oh, we need to play that.
Traces of War was just a fun game. And again, you can finish the full campaign in a day. Very simple to get into. Aesthetically looks amazing. That might rekindle a little bit, right, of the Hex Encounter gem. It's great.
We should play that. We should get that on, because I remember you mentioning those games. Is the new one out?
Traces of Hubris is, yeah, it shipped, I think, in May of this year. Yeah.
Yep. I remember looking into that and then kind of putting that on the, hey, we should play this sometime. That might cut to the front. Oh man, that Traces of Hubris cover is amazing. Okay, so that's from Nakamura, like you said. It is Case Blue. Not my favorite topic to game. I would not order Case Blue if they reprinted it. Let's just put it that way.
Traces of War is the Soviet liberation of Ukraine. So in 43, 44.
2024?
No, for 19.
A joke, I get.
Yeah, I see where you're going. Yeah. No, so that maybe that has more appeal to you, but even the MMP titles, they don't look as nice. Sorry, MMP, but they're great games, like Victory Awaits, Victory Denied, Victory Lost.
So I'm looking at Traces of War right now. So like you start like in the like, so have you played Stalingrad 42 from GMT?
No.
Okay, so you're like right there. Bam, like your lines are engaged. It looks like in Traces of War, at least in this one particular scenario, like you're in it.
Yeah, the front line is all in contact. Yep. And it is a complete race against the clock. So there are 2 scenarios in the game for Traces of War. The first is just you have to get a certain number of your mechanized units as the Soviets across the river.
Okay.
The second scenario is you have to capture a number of cities or victory points. And the challenging mechanism that the designer puts in for the Axis forces is you have to use you get these strategic command tokens, and you can either get reinforcements, which are great to try to hold the front line, or you can use them to remove I think it's last stand marker or something like that. If a city has a fight to the last man marker and it's lost, it's an auto victory for the Soviets.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And as the Soviets, you're torn between, do you try to go after those cities or do you just bypass them and race to the river?
Yeah.
It is a fantastic game.
So at first I thought you were going a different direction like that. I was like, well, that kind of sounds like Determined Defense in Zoc Bond. No, that's wild.
Yeah. Yep.
You just straight up lose.
Yeah, it's done.
And I'm if
So
if the video version of ever this comes out, I'm showing the games, and it just like, man, they're
and that map looks beautiful.
yeah, and it's simple, but it also, you know what map it reminds me of is oh my gosh, the first game I ever, Battle Hymn. Battle Hymn Volume
Oh,
1. Muted browns and greens.
yeah.
Really nice. Yeah, I like that. Oh, Kevin, you might have done it.
And everything that you need to from like a counter mix and all that is
Uh-huh.
all on the map as well. And it's just even the smallest design decisions that he made in it, where I can't remember the exact numbers. I think I'll get them right. The German forces have a movement rating of 5 generally. The Soviet forces have 4. With how the zones of controls work, it means if the German player plays it right, they can always stay just out of range of the
Oh,
Soviets.
yeah, okay.
And each player, when you start your turn, you make the decision: are you doing movement first, or are you doing combat first? And it's chit pull, so it's great for solitaire. So if you're looking for a game to play solitaire, definitely take a look at this one, because you don't know which formation will activate next. You might get 3 Soviet activations in a row, right? And it's very engaging.
Look at this lineup coming from one. So that sounds amazing, and it does bring up an interesting, well, at least interesting to me. What a like the last year from Downfall forward, interesting maneuver mechanics in game. Like Downfall, that
Mhm.
Zocbond, or that Zoc system that is similar to Zocbond.
Those damn hex spines.
Hex spines, yeah, not Zocbonds. They're
Yeah.
TM hex spines. Fascinating. Love it.
Yep.
Rebel Fury, maneuvering in Rebel Fury blows my mind. I just love creating the roadblocks of just like, well, sorry, I'm here. You're gonna have to crawl around me. Love it.
Yeah.
And then hearing this, that sounds great. Um, man, okay. There is some cool shit coming out from
Yeah, this is all VUCA stuff. The 1812 game was actually played at the con too. I didn't get a
Oh, is that
chance
what they
to
were
watch too
oh,
much
is
of it.
that what the screens?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
looked great. Yeah,
I think there
Dennis
were like
and
3
Dennis and
played.
Austin were playing that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that looks good. So Donnerschlag is what I played, and that was good. It had some issues, but I did like it.
yeah.
That's not the one I meant to open up. I meant to open up. Anyways. Okay. All right, let's play a VUCA game.
Okay, fine.
I want to know more about this Seminole Catastrophe.
I haven't seen that even yet.
That's a
Yeah,
20.
looks
It
interesting.
says 2024, but they don't have a designer listed. So
The other one from VUCA that I'm very excited about, and I just realistically, I don't think I'm going to be able to play it this year. Maybe next year is 1914 Knock Paris.
yeah, yeah.
So
You
that
know, we had that as a prize last year, which was pretty awesome. Like, and you want to talk about a heavy box?
yeah, very heavy. The
Get
first
some curls with
first
that.
5 weeks of World War One, and one of it's a small thing, but what I find so fascinating just from looking at it at a preliminary level is, a lot of games you have these counters that say, hey, your combat strength's 5, your combat strength's 12 when attacking, or your defense is 4, whatever.
Uh huh.
Knock Paris says, forget that. Your attack strength is 120 or whatever exuberantly high number. And then this other unit is 20 because it's been so reduced.
So in this one image, I see one that's 28 and one that's like 16. So, but then there was also some that were smaller than, like, this one's
Yeah.
3.
Yeah. But I think it goes so well because it looked like the units have like up to 6 different step losses that degrade the combat effectiveness, which I
Oh,
think
okay.
you need for this era, right? For just the attrition that these formations took
Yeah.
to really represent that. And the combat resolution table is a portrait 8.5 by 11 full sheet for the results. It's massive.
Okay. Huh. All right. That looks pretty sweet.
All
Okay.
right.
All right.
Mission
Hey,
accomplished.
mission, very much so. I'm pretty hyped for that. Okay. We have one last thing to do. You're familiar with the hot seat. You know how it works. Rapid fire answers. I'll fire off a bunch of questions.
Sure. This will
Ready?
go well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll go fine. What's the worst that could happen? Some of these you might have already answered.
Yeah. Already. Yeah.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
All right, BCS or OCS?
OCS.
First war game?
Uh, Controversially, I'm going to say Next War Taiwan because the other one was Twilight Struggle. And I don't want to get into that battle.
Fair. Who wins the Stanley Cup this year?
The Detroit Red Wings.
Game on your table right now?
Which table?
Yeah.
We'll say Downfall, I guess.
What's a game you haven't or you've wanted to play but haven't yet?
That's just an unfair question.
Mm.
My God. I'm going to say High Frontier for All. I think out of all of them on the shelf, High Frontier for All.
Cool. So much fun. Last great book you read?
Guns of August, actually, for
Nice.
1949 Paris. Yeah.
Very good. Favorite piece of favorite fiction book?
Three Body Problem.
Oh, okay. All right. Favorite nonfiction?
It's a Churchill Warlord, I think is the title. Biography on Churchill.
Okay. If you could have one book on a deserted island, what would it be?
I can't remember the full year and stuff, but Wizards of the Coast Star Wars RPG core rulebook.
Nah, okay. Get a little creative with it. All right. One movie on an island?
It's harder. We'll say Gladiator.
Okay, fair. Video game on an island?
Star Wars Galaxies. Been playing that for 20 years straight.
Hell yeah. Okay, very cool. Excluding all the stuff we just talked about, so Downfall, Next War, BCS, what's the last great game you played?
The last great game? Probably an in-person playthrough of Smolensk.
Nice.
OCS, yeah.
Who wins the English Premier League this year?
Chelsea Football Club.
Who's your favorite Chelsea player of all time?
I don't want to be called a plastic by anybody who's following this because I've been watching since the 90s, but Reece James.
Nice. Okay. Brighton or Crystal Palace?
Brighton, because I feel like half the Brighton club has gone to Chelsea, so there's some type of connection there.
Fair. Okay. Sci-fi or fantasy?
Sci-fi.
Alien or Aliens?
Alien.
Favorite OCS title?
Oh, Third Winter.
Favorite BCS title?
Not Eric Court. Panzer's Last Stand. I haven't gotten to Last Blitzkrieg yet, so that might end up topping it, but Panzer's Last Stand.
Favorite SCS game?
Even though it takes a year to play, Day of Days.
Awesome. Best city to get barbecue in?
I'd probably have to say best barbecue I've had was in Dallas.
How dare you? West Ham or Tottenham?
West Ham.
Favorite Next War title?
Taiwan, by far.
Ooh, hell yeah. Okay. Antietam or Shiloh?
Shiloh.
Pacific or Band of Brothers?
Band of Brothers.
Favorite war game of all time?
Probably Third Winter.
Nice. Wow. Not what I thought. Okay. If you could meet and have dinner with any military leader, dead or alive, who would it be?
Eisenhower.
Nice. Favorite non-war game board game?
Star Wars Armada count?
Sure. Yeah. Well, feels pretty war.
Yeah, that's cheating a little. Okay. Star Wars Outer Rim. Actually been playing.
Yeah. Nice. If you could do a dream playthrough of any game or series, how your style on your YouTube channel, what would it be?
War in the Pacific.
The old, yeah. Okay. Interesting.
But that's a bit of a thing to accomplish.
Okay. Best war game series of all time?
OCS.
Okay. And war game series you haven't played but want to. Series, not game.
Coin.
Wow. Never played a coin, huh?
Game.
Okay. Well, there's a whole nother, if you're not going to get into the debate of is Twilight Struggle a war game or not, there's even a debate as to whether coin is a series or not.
Yeah. I feel I'll get credit with most people there, though.
So to me, other than the stuff coming from VUCA, like Red Strike and stuff, and Next War, you're primarily a World War II gamer then, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. I think if there were more options for kind of current era, modern war games, I might have a little more interest there. Okay. The other one that we haven't really talked about at all that's of interest to me is really naval war games, and specifically World War One. So the Great War at Sea series by Avalanche Press.
Uh-huh.
Fan of those games, but yeah, mostly World War Two.
Okay. Have you ever messed around with like Fear God and Dreadnought for
No.
okay. That's just
No.
like a mini set, but you can use you can get big counters to do
Oh, okay.
just a rule set for naval battles and Fear God and Dreadnought, and there's some other around like the World War One or like turn of the century.
Turn of the century.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Rule the Waves, great PC game. Hopefully Mitch gets into that.
Yeah. So when you said what's on the table, I've been, I was playing some American Truck Simulator the other day because I'm really hyped for Train Sim 5 to come out.
Sure.
But then I was like cleaning up my area because I have to have like all these RPG books have to go away because I need like enough space to run my train controller, right?
Sure.
And then when I just knocked over an empty can. I was like, oh, I should clean up this joystick. So I was like, shit, let's just download Flight Simulator.
Yeah, why not?
Why not, right? Well, it's like, the reason why you don't is because it's got like a 150 gigabyte mandatory update that took. I told my daughter, I was like, hey, sweetie, like, do you want to come fly a plane around? Like, this update shouldn't take too much longer. And she's 4 and doesn't understand the patience of like,
what's an update?
Yeah, well, one, what's an update, and why is it taking 3 hours? And then so I fired up. I'm like, all right, and then I plug in my joystick, and it doesn't have like basic mappings. Like you have to custom map it. So I'm just like, all right. So today, finally, she got to fly around, and she wanted to, like, you can pick anywhere in the map, and she just happened to pick Hawaii. Like she doesn't know where Hawaii is, but she picked it, and she really liked it, and she did a pretty good job. Like I got her airborne and stuff, and then what she didn't realize, and she had full control, right? She's doing the whole thing, but I had the Xbox controller. And so if she ever got to like a 10-degree like climb or something like that, just like, oh, let's level you out just a little bit. She was, and then I don't know if you ever mess with Flight Sim, but like you can fly by your house.
And because it's all like Google Map.
Well, like Bing Maps, I'm sure they wish they used Google Maps, I'm sure. And it's a little outdated and it won't look one for one, but she just started this new school. And so like our house just looked like, trees over a house. It was cool to me, but she's like not impressed. So then we flew by our new school, and that was a little more clear because it's a bigger building. And that was kind of neat.
Nice.
Have you played well, we can have a whole conversation about PC games, but the one kind of simulation-esque is the oh my gosh, it's the Fleet Carrier Command. Have you messed around with Carrier Command at all?
I have.
I would love to do another night of Carrier Command with guys from the Discord. The 3 of us did it one night, and it was just like all I did was pilot the big carrier. Like I didn't go on any attack missions, and then I got close to beaching the whole thing. Like you have one job, Matt, just like leave us in the water, and like the beaching notifications start blaring.
That is one thing that has surprised me because in 2014 was the year I really got into wargaming, and took a couple years off in the late 2010s to do more so PC wargaming and like the Gary Grigsby games and all of that. Every Gary Grigsby game is just a massive hex encounter war game. That's all it is. And I'm shocked there's not more crossover really in the community or what folks are playing there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because that's a good point, because I've messed around with like Ultimate General Civil War, which really still comes down to odds and combat strength and all those things, and it's more 3D. But even like Crusader Kings, I just wonder, is there lack of, and that's not so much hex encounter, but obviously the historical interest.
Yeah,
maybe there's something with OCS. I can sit down with a rule book, and Crusader Kings is less like, here's a tiny tutorial, and we have this rule book way over here. At least for those games, maybe it's, I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I think 2 parts of it is, one, screen time.
Sure, yeah.
Most of us working, right? It's give me something other than a giant monitor in front of me. My God, Matt, this is almost 2 hours. Second would be, a lot of those games tell you you've got a 93% win chance, right? Or whatever, before you go into a battle or something, regardless of the game. Our more physical analog medium, you don't have that. You can maybe sit there and go ham on this column and stuff, so chances are good if I roll a 7, but you don't have that same all-knowing outcome before you make the decision.
It's true. Well, very good. I think we'll wrap up there before I start going down the rabbit hole of another hobby I don't need, which is war PC games.
Traces of War, VUCA Simulations.
Focus. Yeah. Very good. Kevin, thank you so much for one. I'm glad you came down to Historic Fest. It was an absolute blast.
Thank you for hosting that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My pleasure. I really mean that. It's the people, obviously, that make Historic Fest worth it. Trust me, I'm not in it for the money.
Nope.
So
but man, kudos for the organization, man, because that's a big endeavor.
Well,
so thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who came down. If I didn't mention your name, it's not because for any reason. It's just there's a lot of people there. Legitimately, seeing so many of you is great. The return people, always awesome. This was the first year that Bill Simone and I were not the last two standing. I told the last group of people, I was like, you guys got to be out of here by 2. I'm leaving. So I was done this weekend. But thank you for that. And thank you for coming on the show, helping me recap it. And a great conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope everyone else enjoys it. And I urge everyone to head over to First Contact Gamer over on YouTube. There's going to be a link down in the show notes. Subscribe, hit the notification button, all those things for Kevin. Go like all his videos. There's like episode 9, Downfall, and then the new episode of your kind of, if you want more detail on the next war tournament scenario, go check out the first video of that.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Matt, and hope you have a great day.
Yeah, thanks everyone.